السلام عليكم. أنا اسمي مراد. أنا من السودان. I represented myself in Arabic, my native language, and I said my name is Murad and I am from Sudan. And this is my story. I grew up in Sudan and it is northern east of Africa. Back home in Sudan, you hold strong to your culture, your identity, and your tribe. And my tribe is called Al Bani Amir. And Al Bani Amir is a smaller tribe in a bigger tribe called Zabija. And these are some pictures. In history, they are known as the Nubian or Black Pharaohs, and Ethiopian by the Greeks, which meant the people of the burnt faces, and Habesha if you live in in Eritrea. That's what makes us unique, our culture and history, and without it, we're nothing. Until I came to the United States, black was just a color. And in fact, back home, we don't use color to identify each other. Instead, we use ethnicity names. But black is used for people from western part of Sudan and the southern. And we don't always call them black. We say blue. I know it sounds weird, but we only say black if you're trying to offend somebody. And we have another name for people from South Sudan, and we call them Zinji, which is closer to the word slave. It is used in common in every day, or mostly every day, but in Sudan, but it's not counted as racist. Until I came to the United States, and I lived in a house with my family, with my mom and 6 siblings, and we all had different skin tone. However, I was I am darker than my mom and my dad, and all my siblings are different skin tone. For example, when I came to the United States, and people see me with my sister, which she's way lighter than I am, and people say we are not siblings, and because how we look. Having family with different skin tone, hair texture is normal back home in Sudan, and apparently it is not in the United States. So when we came here, we had to fill so many applications, and I remember the first form I had to fill out, and so many questions, but most of them were easy to answer. For example, my age, my birthday, and my name, for example. Okay. And then when it came to the ethnicity checkbox, I saw Middle Eastern and I knew what that was. And I saw Latino, I saw Asian, but and then when I looked down, I did not see African or East African. Instead, I saw Black, African American. And I told myself, I'm not neither of these. I am not American yet, and I'm not Black. And from what I have heard, black people are not treated fairly in the United States and they're discriminated against. And I do not want to put myself with them because I don't see them as my people. And time passed and I turned 16 and I started looking for jobs online, and whenever I apply for a job, I would check the box that says others because I was afraid that I'm gonna be judged by my color and my were gonna be limited because I'm black. And this box made me hate myself, and for a while it made me feel unacceptable in a country that I am gonna grow up in and spend the rest of my life. And and many Americans think of black people as aggressive, lazy, and drug addict, but I am not. I kept telling myself I don't want to be black, and I tried to look different from other black American. Then I realized that it matters more than it matters how you identify yourself. For example, Someone from Ireland with his culture, his history, and all that he has in the United States, he's just simply white. Just like I am Bija back home in my country, but when I come to the United States, this my background, my history, and all what my people has achieved is put in one box, and it is black. This is what I have learned. In the end, it does not matter how people view you. All what matters is that you know who you are. And being Bija did not make me a good or bad person. And being black in the United States is not gonna stop me from achieving what I want. And my message to you is just like there is not one black or East African American or East African or African. There is also not one type of white American and other ethnicities. Thank you for listening.
Fall. I ran through the door to my bedroom, tears stinging my eyes. I flailed my helpless body on my bed and into my pillows. I sobbed uncontrollably. My mother came in, seconds later, rushing to find out what happened. "What's wrong, sweetie? You can tell me. You can tell me anything." She kept saying that. I just kept sobbing, eventually soaking my pillow. I finally rolled over and showed her. She saw, she cried, I cried. "Hi, I'm Riley, and I'm a freshman here at Yorktown. I'm a military child, so I've moved around a lot. My name is spelled so funky, and that's because I was actually born in Hawaii. I've been to 9 schools in the past 10 years. With my father being in the Army, I've had to learn to be independent and support myself. But being a military brat has also challenged me and helped me create more friendships. People always ask me, 'How are you so positive, so energetic, so happy?' I tell them, 'You have to go through a lot of pain to see the rainbow.' No, I don't actually say that. That's from a Pinterest board, I swear. But I imply that you should always keep your head up. I had to. I had to when my father first deployed in 2007 to Baghdad, Iraq. I didn't know if he was coming home. I had to do it again in 2009 when he deployed to Baghdad, Iraq, again, not knowing if he was going to come home dead. I had to do it again when my father was stationed overseas in Turkey for a year. He came back the day of the coup. I didn't know if he was going to be stuck in Turkey for another year or not. You have to go through a lot to know how to keep going. Others have their story, but here's mine, my journey to becoming a songwriter. I was living in Richmond Hill, Georgia, 20 minutes outside of Savannah at the time, and I was in 2nd grade, and it was picture day, my favorite day of the year. I had a purple shirt with a patterned skirt. Everybody came up and said, "Oh, I love your skirt." I'm like, "Thanks, it's from Gymboree." And when it was my turn in line, I handed the photographer my form like a normal child does on picture day and said, "I want that background, the brick with the purple flowers to match my purple shirt." She looked at me and said, "Honey, if you want that background, you're gonna have to suck in that little poochy stomach of yours, okay?" Me, being the clueless kid I was, agreed and did so. The following week, my pictures came in the mail, and my mom immediately mailed them out to all of my family members. When I showed her my copy that I had, she realized that she had sent a picture of her 7-year-old daughter in 2nd grade sucking in her stomach with all that she had. My mother explained to me what this was, what it meant, and when I understood, I was so angry. I went straight to my diary, and, well, these lyrics came out of it. Save me, protect me from the bad. Save me whenever you can. This was my first song, but I never thought anything of it. 2 years later, it was time, and my father got stationed in Mountain View, California. We moved from Georgia across the country to California. My heart was broken. I was devastated. I thought I had made the best friends, but I kept my head up. I made friends with the neighbors, and I was just fine with that. On the first day of 3rd grade, I slowly walked onto the school grounds of Montaloma Elementary School. I was honestly so scared I couldn't even tell you what I was thinking, thoughts racing through my head. I sat in my seat with the name on it and didn't talk to anybody The girl next to me immediately started glaring at me and said, "Why do you have so many pencils?" And I quickly said, "I just want to be prepared." And I sulked real low into my seat. Day 2 wasn't much better. The girl, in fact, said that I was fat and brought her friend along to back her up on it. She said, "Yeah, you are, and you have a lot of milk." I was really confused, and she pointed at my chest. I looked down, and I started to hurt inside. Man, times. Then those girls brought their whole crew during recess and said, "Oh, look, it's a pig. Look, she can't even run. She can't even fit into her own clothes." My stomach began to turn. My heart began to pound. My head felt like it was being banged with a boulder. I felt tears building up, but I shook it off and forced a smile on my face. The kids stopped for the rest of the week. They said, "We want to end on a high note on Friday." The following week, everything worsened. Monday, I was writing and the bell for recess rang. I bolted out the door to the big yellow slide. I loved that slide. When I got there, the nightmare began. When I reached the top of the slide, I came face to face with one of the girls in the group that was bullying me last week. She said, "You think you can go down that slide? Oh, no, you're too fat for it. You'll break it easily." I tried to defend myself by saying, "Stop it, that's not nice, don't do that." And she ignored me. Out of nowhere, I felt a piercing slap on my face, left cheek. I stood back up to defend myself again, but she knocked me down again. She pushed me down the big yellow slide that I thought was my favorite, wasn't anymore. I fell down the big yellow slide. I reached the bottom and was met by the group of kids who was hurting me. I ran away from them. Their shouts of, "Look at Fatty run! Look at little fat crybaby. She can't even run. She's so fat." I went straight to the monkey bars. I shook it all off again. And I saw a girl who seemed pretty nice and told her, "Hey, I like your justice outfit." She smirked and said, "Oh, thanks," and paused. I smiled during that pause, but as she started to talk again, she said, "But you'll never be able to fit into them. They don't even carry your size. You're like a triple XL." I started to cry immediately. The following day, the same girl that had slapped me on my left cheek punched me in my stomach so hard that I felt like my organs went through the backbone. It left the bruise the size of a plum. I ran away to the monkey bars. The group of kids came up to me and said, "You're fat. You're not allowed on those. You'll break them. Look at yourself." When I looked down, one of them stepped out and karate kicked me right here, right above my belly button. Another came in and punched me on my side, and I fell to the ground like a helpless baby bird. I went back to class, but as I walked in, they were already sitting at their desks, mouthing "fatty" at me. Fast forward to the time I got home. I dropped everything, bolted to my room, slipping on the carpeted stairs. I fell, but I kept going despite that. I forced my door open and flailed my aching, helpless body onto my bed, into my pillows. I sobbed. Seconds later, my mom rushing in saying, "What's wrong, sweetie? You're okay. It's fine. Just tell me. You can tell me anything. You know that, right?" She kept telling me that, and I just kept sobbing harder and harder. Finally, I had the courage and controlled myself. I could speak again. "What's wrong? Tell me. It's okay, baby. It's wrong." I sat up a bit, causing my stomach to turn in knots. I lifted my shirt, and she saw. Her eyes became glass, and soon it was a flood of salty tears pouring from her eyes. I trembled and said, "Mommy, I don't want to go to school again. I can't. They're going to hurt me again. I know it. They're going to hurt me. Just like they did today, yesterday, last week. I don't want to go to school, Mommy. I'm scared." Later that night, I had finally calmed down, and I wrote in my diary. I started humming. I added a tune to my words. I knew in that moment I was destined to be a songwriter. A few days later, I was tested into a Catholic school, St. Simon Catholic Parish. And they were so surprised. I had surpassed the expectations of scores, and I got in. St. Simon was my new home and forever changed me. So, how am I so happy, you ask? Gotta keep your head up, oh, never let your head down, hey. The song I wrote that day is what you should always do. No matter what, keep your head up. In every situation, keep your head up. Push through the hard times, step through the good times. Don't hold back from celebrating life. Thank you.
Building. Exactly 6 months before, on my 15th birthday, I was riding a different vehicle, a jet ski, at my friend's river house. I technically shouldn't have been operating this vehicle for several reasons. One, I should have been at least 16 to ride it, and two, as I found out while reading the safety label, I should have been wearing a special kind of protective wetsuit. According to the label, if I were to fall off the jet ski while it was in motion, the water shooting out the back might go up my anatomy. I read that, and all I could think was, my God, what a terrible obituary that would be. Alicia Foster was such a lovely young woman with so much life ahead of her. Everyone who knew her regrets that her uterus exploded. But even the thought of an exploding uterus was not enough to deter me from driving this jet ski. I never thought I'd say that sentence out loud. My dad climbed onto it with me to teach me the basics. His hands gently held my wrists as I backed cautiously out of the little alcove. I felt the revving engine beneath me, and I felt safe and secure learning to turn and speed up and slow down. But it was an altogether different experience when I got on my own. As I whooshed across the surface of the water in the sunlight, the back of the jet ski light with the absence of guidance, I felt riveting, real, and right. This was not the first time I did something independently, but it was the first time I was utterly ready for it. I spun the jet ski handle in a circle and jumped over my own wake, splashing down and cutting forward in the water, surprised by both my speed and my absence of fear. I always thought that feeling was reserved for the big, recognized coming-of-age moments, like driving a car for the first time or going off to college. I thought it was those particular moments that make somebody adult, all the boxes to check off. Driving a car makes you an adult, going to college makes you an adult, but driving a jet ski? That shouldn't matter. I was wrong. It's not the experience that makes you an adult. It's your response to it. Driving a car for the first time didn't make me more mature because it didn't give me that electric feeling of commingled power and responsibility. But you know what did? Ordering food from a concession stand for the first time, and riding alone on the metro and selling my first piece of art. None of these are widely recognized milestones, but they are the ones that matter to me and have helped me grow. So if you want to be more mature and empowered, don't look in the obvious places. Go wherever you can find that feeling. And if that search leads you to a jet ski, hop on. Thank you.
It's snack time, around 9:30 in the morning, which is early, but it's elementary school and this is how it's done. First graders are putting away their composition notebooks in their cubbies, and teachers are going to their cabinets to pull out their Dixie cups and bulk bags of goldfish. One teacher pauses with her hands still reaching in the cabinet. What's that commotion out in the hall? She shepherds her protesting first graders into the class bathroom and goes back to turn off the lights and shut the door when bang! The door slams open and a rain of gunfire is unleashed onto the children. She throws herself over them, trying to protect their small innocent bodies, but she can't possibly cover them all, and she watches as her first graders convulse from gunfire and bleed out onto the ABC carpet. Sandy Hook Elementary School. December 14th, 2012, 20 first graders and 6 staff died. The shooter also killed himself. I was 9. This was my introduction to mass shootings. Sandy Hook is generally known as a day of chaos and tragedy, but if I'm being honest, I don't really remember the damage it did to the first-hand public. The only thing I remember is that when my mom picked me up from school that day, she hugged me for so hard and for so long that it hurt, and I didn't know why until she sat me down later that night at the table to tell me what had happened. When writing this, I asked my mom how she could have possibly tried to find the words to explain this to her innocent 9-year-old, and she got choked up just thinking about it. She said that I mostly just sat at the table and listened to her explain. I had asked why it had happened, but I hadn't completely grasped the enormity of the situation. You guys have probably been in this exact situation before. She said that she struggled a lot with explaining it because this was also a first time for her. She had never had to explain something as horrendous like this to anyone before, much less her 9-year-old daughter. Whether it is fortunate or unfortunate from her, she never had to explain it to me again. Sandy Hook on out, I understood what a mass shooting was, but I didn't truly understand the enormity of all of the shootings until about 4 years later. Here is a club with lights straying onto the ceiling and a live band playing at the front of the stage with the bass from their music pounding deep into your chest. People are partying, celebrating their diversity and enjoying themselves to the fullest. Women are giggling amongst themselves as they touch up their makeup in the bathroom, and men are blushing as they offer each other drinks, hoping that their act of kindness will maybe lead to a date later. It is a scene of joyous festivity. And then people are screaming. How could it have changed so quickly? And no, not the screams you're half imagining right now. I mean screams that rip at the vocal cords that you can't possibly unhear. The worst screams you could possibly imagine. Gunshots through the air, weaving in with the sounds of the screams. Imagine being on the floor of a bathroom hearing this from out there. Pulse nightclub, Orlando, Florida, June 12th, 2016. 49 dead, 50 injured, an act of violence against minorities. It was Latin night at the LGBTQ+ club. This was the first mass shooting that I vividly remember, and if it tells you anything, I didn't have to look up the location, the date, or the number dead or injured in order to write this. After the Pulse shooting, I walked around the next day expecting people to be acting differently. After all, this was the worst mass shooting in US history, but it was not what I expected it would be. There were no protests, no tears, no anything. Instead of change, all we got were the victims' names and their pictures on magazine covers. I wanted to go up to people, shake them, yell at their faces. These people are still in the hospital. How are you not reacting? And then sometime later that day, it hit me. They're not reacting because this isn't the first time. These mass shootings are normal. The first time happened years ago. Some pinpoint it as Columbine, some pinpoint Sandy Hook. The adults of America as a whole have forgotten the shock of seeing these first times. They're not seeing what our generation is seeing. They're not seeing Las Vegas, San Bernardino, or Great Mills through our eyes. They've become numb to the violence and death on the news. And so when they see it, they think, oh, that's too bad, and they flip the channel to keep the news that they're seeing happy and family appropriate. I mean, after all, what's more family appropriate than having your first grader gunned down in their classroom? Our generation isn't like that. Virginia Tech, Tucson, Aurora, and so many more are still the first for us, and that's why we care about them so much. As we grow up, we become more and more aware of what is going on in the world around us. It's Valentine's Day in a high school. 20 minutes until the last bell, kids are starting to wrap up their assignments, pulling out their phones under their desks, hiding them from the teachers to set up their after-school plans. Girls are whispering back and forth, showing off their bouquets of vibrant flowers and the balloons that they received that day. The fire alarm starts to ring. They look at each other with confused faces. We already had a fire alarm today. Why is there another one? Wait, maybe it's actually a real fire this time. Okay, let's go. They start to move towards the door. As the students' quiet shuffling to get away from the alarm reaches the hallway, the teachers start yelling, "Code red, active shooter, get back in your classrooms, get down." From here on out, I can only imagine what they went through. That split second of frozen silence, that innocent disbelief, the chaos that ensues as they realize that some of their friends are already outside because of the fire alarm in the line of gunfire. Teachers beginning to pull students by anything that they can grab into their classrooms, blood-curdling screams echoing off the hallways, kids wailing as they are pushed into closets, under desks, and now the doors are barricaded. And then the silence and the darkness. It literally lasted hours. The kids couldn't make any noise, one peep, and they're all dead. They couldn't turn on the lights. Some kids trapped in the building described the sounds of death they heard from down the hallway, knowing that they couldn't do it, hearing their best friends die, and being trapped under a desk. Imagine the suspense of being in their situation, not wondering if you're ever going to see your parents again, if you're ever going to get in your bed tonight, if you're going to be the one to die next. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, Parkland, Florida, Valentine's Day 2018, 17 dead. The shooter, a white 19-year-old male whose name does not deserve to be spoken. As I was watching this story unfold on the news, I couldn't help but repeat to myself the entire time, this could have been Yorktown, it could have been me, it could have been you, it could have been Yorktown. There's nothing stopping it from being Yorktown. It was a very humbling feeling, sitting there in front of my computer screen, wrapped in a blanket with my math homework strewn all over on the floor in front of me. I had a cup of tea in my hands, and I was fairly comfortable, but I couldn't help but imagine the kids running right at that moment as fast as their legs could carry them out of the school. They were running for their lives, and I was sitting there watching it. My eyes betrayed me, and I started to cry. This was the first time I really felt what was going on with the mass shooting crisis. I don't know why this shooting was the first to hit me the hardest. Maybe it was seeing it live as opposed to watching it later, seeing the kids sprinting out of the building with their hands over their heads, throwing their backpacks off their backs to be able to run faster. Maybe it was seeing the parents and kids collide in embraces that should have never had to happen. Maybe it was seeing the parents say to their children, "Thank God you're alive, because God forbid my parents ever have to say it to me or yours ever have to say it to you." Maybe it was seeing the videos, updated live from students in the classrooms, seeing them all huddled in the corner under desks. Most of them are stifling sobs and trying to subdue their panic. The videos document the gunman banging on the door, the gunshots coming at them. These videos really put you in their shoes, and it highlights the similarities between their situation and ours. And because they were updating it live, I was watching the videos at the same time the kids were sprinting from the school with their hands held above their head yelling, "Don't shoot." In the future, it could be me, lying here on this floor, bleeding out. The very floor where I gave a talk about mass shootings and my relationships to them firsts. Or it could be you, bleeding and in pain. Our parents had wars. We have Columbine, Sandy Hook, and Marjorie Stoneman. Our country's relationship with violence is going downhill, and it needs to get better because it's causing more death and pain in our schools than ever before. The thing is, though, it's not going to get better on its own. The adults of America have clearly shown us this. We have waited long enough. We need people to stand up for what they believe in and to not put up with this unnecessary death for any longer. Lawmakers do not have the right to ignore us while they are making the decisions about gun control that directly affect us in the place that we are forced to go to every day. Although we can't vote, we can still have our voices be heard. We can still contact our lawmakers and raise awareness for this issue. And I know that you hear this all the time, but it's true and it works. I need you. We need you guys to do this. We are the change. We are the young generation that is going to fix this problem because the adults of America are not. Even though our parents have become numb to the violence and death, these are still the first for us, and that's why we care about them. We will not become numb. What is going on right now is unacceptable, and we call BS. We need to do something because I'll be damned if any one of us becomes another statistic because no one in our country was willing to step up and make the change that needs to happen. Thank you.
All right, mine's called The First Time I Quit. So, all my life I've been told that I need an education and that I need to work twice as hard as the next man next to me because of the color of my skin. Even though I heard that advice, it never really hit home until I guess I moved here. I was just Donovan, a kid who liked baseball and flying planes. It wasn't until I moved to Arlington that this advice became a reality. When I transferred to Yorktown my sophomore year, I tried out for the baseball team, and I made it. I was extremely excited and proud of myself for jumping right into the life of the school. But after the first official practice with the team, I kind of had a little racial altercation, I guess. I started having racial slurs directed towards me. I was called burnt banana, nigger, and go back to Africa. And instead of resorting to violence, like I usually would, I guess, I decided to tell the coach. And I was told that they won't believe me because white sticks with white, and I guess that kind of stuck with me ever since then. And long story short, the kids got 1 week of suspension for practice, and to my disbelief, the administrators actually didn't believe me, and they took their word over mine. Maybe because I was new to the new school and had an unknown reputation, or maybe for more sinister reasons. But what I learned from this experience is that racism is real and occurs no matter where you live. I also learned that ultimately the only way to get through difficult times is to just persevere, and have the laser focus towards what you want in life. If I work as hard as the next man, I can get what I want no matter the obstacle. The hardest lesson that came from this incident, however, was that situations aren't always what they appear on the surface. The racial incidents caused me to distrust those in position of authority, and I no longer felt safe or excited about playing on my school team, so I quit. And in time, I came to the realization that the actions of some should not dictate my future, and that perseverance is a key trait needed to find success. I improved myself as an individual by joining an organization called MSAN at my school, which promotes academic and social responsibility for male students of color. In this organization, I've learned how to carry myself as a young man and develop good communication skills that will help me in the workforce. MSAN taught me valuable leadership skills because I want to be a positive role model for people throughout my life. And so what I learned is that no matter what others think of me, I'll reach my goals as long as I work hard and persevere. Yeah, this is also my college application, so I kind of got to skip some stuff. So yeah, now I'm, doing my own thing, I guess. I got into college, by the way, yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's it.
I was born in Idaho, which is a long ways away from Virginia. I was born in a town of 300 people, and my graduating senior class was 30 people, if you can imagine that. So very tiny rural town. And this story takes place when I was 13 years old, which I didn't look much different than I do now. Which is a good thing, I think, aging gracefully. At 13, my father decided that it was time for myself and my brother to learn responsibility. And the way that he decided we would do this was he bought 2 sheep for us to raise. And most Idaho thing you can think of, I'm sure. 2 sheep we were to raise, and throughout the summer we would take care of them, and at the end of the summer we would take them to the county fair, and we would auction them off. And the money that we earned from that auction would be our summer's earnings. So it was a win-win situation. We learned responsibility, and we earned some money. So the summer was coming to a close. We had watered them, we had fed them, we tried to train sheep, if you can imagine that. And by the end of the summer, we were getting very excited. It was a Sunday afternoon, and my brother and I had just finished walking our sheep, and we decided that we would try to be a little risky and try to ride them. So we did, and we got on them, and needless to say, sheep do not like to be ridden. And we tried several times, getting bucked off, getting back on, and we thought it was hilarious. The sheep did not. And so we excitedly left to go tell our family of our sheep riding adventures, and in our haste, forgot to close the gate. And so we got inside, we laughed about this. My family was going to visit our grandparents, and I stayed home because I had some homework to do. And not 5 minutes later, after they left, I came into our kitchen, looked out the window where our car is usually parked, the carport, and what should be standing there but my sheep? And it was glaring me down, calling for penance for the fact that I tried to ride it around. And in my 13-year-old mind, I decided, well, what to do? Obviously, sheep don't like to be corralled, and this one has some revenge on its mind. And so I thought, well, I'll need its halter, the leash-like thing we use to walk it. And I said, well, if this sheep doesn't want to come, what do I need to use? And right by the door, my tools were a tennis racket and a golf club. And I took both of them. So halter, tennis racket, golf club in hand, I crept out the door very slowly towards the sheep. And it gave me a little bit of a side eye, didn't move, crept a little bit closer. Again, a little bit of a side eye, but no movement. A little bit closer, and it darts off. A little bit of tantalizing, but it darts off. And we live on a 5-acre plot of land, most of it surrounded by wheat. And at this point in the year, the wheat was very high. I was in shorts, t-shirt, flip-flops, and I go chasing this sheep. And cut the wheat cutting my legs, but I am determined to catch this sheep. Get to the corner of the field, and it's been cornered. And I think this is perfect. And again, I try my strategy. A little bit of side eye, a little bit of side eye, and it decides again to run down towards the house. Well, here I use my resources. I throw the tennis racket, and I miss. And I think, all right, I throw the golf club, and thanks to the longness of golf clubs, it hits it in the head. And perfect. It's down. I can grab it. No, sheep are very resilient, and it pops back up, and it continues to run. And so at this time, it goes into our yard, and it goes to an area where currently we were building a fire pit. And I think, excellent. Resources of the bricks that I can use to try to catch this sheep. So I bend down, and it is full-on war. Grab the brick, throw it, grab the brick, throw it, brick after brick, the sheep dodging all of my throws. It turns around, stares at me, and it decided it's had enough of my shenanigans. And it darts across the road into a 100-acre cornfield. This cornfield, now at this point of the year, obviously, the corn is much taller than I am, and I am not to be dissuaded. And I march across with the halter in hand, and now it becomes dusk, and all I can see is a little white blob trailing off into the corn. So I march into the corn. It's also very sharp, like wheat, cutting my arms, cutting my legs. See it going farther and farther. When out of nowhere, I see a 60-ish-year-old man in the middle of this cornfield. And the sheep stops. And there is the man, there is the sheep, and there is myself. And we're at a standoff. The man looks at the sheep, looks up at me, looks back at the sheep, and then he whispers. And just like that, the sheep lies down. And I realize that I have just met a sheep whisperer. Thankfully, I seize my opportunity, I go to the sheep, put the halter on, and I put it as tight as I can to make sure that the poor sheep won't run away. And I look at him and I say, "Thank you." No response. And he goes away off into the cornfield. I drag the sheep back as much as I can, and it is given it all it can to not be dragged. Get it safely into the pen and take off the halter, and it pops right back up, happy as can be that it is now back home. This is the first time that I met a sheep whisperer, but it is not the last, just to be warned. But this is also a story of the first time I learned how to be responsible on my own. It was very hard being 13 years old, home alone, trying to decide what to do, and using the only resources that I had, a halter, a tennis racket, and a golf club. It would have been easy to tell my dad, well, it just got out and ran away, and we have to cut our losses. But instead, I took responsibility for my actions, that I had left the gate open, and that it was my job and my responsibility to catch this sheep, regardless of how much it did not want to be caught. So I share this with you in hopes that you will also learn to take action in your own life. Accept your own responsibility for the actions that you have.